Hey, it's Kendall, and welcome to my April through June reading wrap up. I read 12 books in quarter two, which isn't a ton. I know in June I only ended up reading 2 books, but it is what it is, so let's get into it. Starting back in April, the first book I read was Save the Date by Allison Raskin, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is a rom com based on the author's real life situation when her fiance left her out of nowhere, leaving her with a wedding date and kind of an embarrassing situation. So instead of canceling her wedding, she decides that she is going to find a new groom to replace him. I've been following Alison Raskin on the internet for many years. I read her previous fiction novels, so I already knew going into this that I was going to like it, and I was proven correct. This was a very funny, witty rom-com. I liked that even though I knew who she was going to end up with based on who she's married to in real life. The journey there was still a good time. I liked the mental health discussions. I liked the family, friends dynamic, and all of the conflict was like understandable. Unlike some romances where you just want to like shake the main characters like get over themselves, this was like a real like conflict of interest where I was like, ooh, how are the main couple gonna like get through this to the end? But it was still a very satisfying ending, and I had a really good time with it. I think if you're in the mood for just like a smart rom-com, then you should definitely pick up Save the Date. Next I read Witch Hat Atier Volume 8 by Kamome Shirama, and this entire series I have just given a 4 stars. It's the first manga series that I've ever read. The series as a whole is very like YA middle school because our main character Coco is like 12 and she is a young girl who joins a witch atelier to learn how to be a witch. But in this world, people believe that you are only born a witch or not, and she discovers that that's not actually true, that anyone can use magic, but it's a deeply kept secret by the witch organization because they want to make sure the right people have that type of power. So this entire series is her discovering magic, discovering the world of witches. It's just extremely charming. There's mystery along with the story, along with her, and like her teacher is a very interesting character as well, who has their own like mystery stuff going on. It just really hits all of that like childhood magic school fantasy element that I really enjoyed as a child and have been enjoying as an adult as well. And this volume just continued to be an amazing addition into the series. I also know, I believe next year in 2026, an anime is going to come out based on this manga, and I seriously can't wait because I know it's going to be amazing. Okay, the next book I read was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This is like such a popular thriller on Book Talk, and I know it's being made into either a movie or a TV series, which is why I picked it up because I wanted to read it before the show. But man, I did not love this. I finished it in a day, like start to finish, I read it in a day. So it's a very easy read. But the main character, Millie, is just so frustrating to be in the head of because because she just makes decisions that infuriated me. She ignores every red flag in front of her and like doesn't question it. And like even with all the twists and turns or whatnot, I find it a little unbelievable that Millie had zero friends or family that stuck by her like throughout her life and her entire situation. And like the fact that the series continues on with like many more books with Millie, I was like, there's no way I think I can continue the series because she is so insufferable. I was just really surprised at how popular this book was. But I guess as far as thrillers go, like I said, I did read it in a day, so it was a very easy read. Okay, my next book was a reread, and it was An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. This is a brutal sci-fi novel, and I mean brutal, I mean brutal. Basically, it takes place on a spaceship called Matilda that has a very active slave system. Like the people of the lower decks are slaves and discriminated against and treated as animals and non-human. And our main character, Aster, lives on the lower decks, but trains with an upper decks physician in order to be a doctor. And when she was barely born, her mother committed suicide and left behind a bunch of notes and journals. So throughout her life, she's been like decoding those and figuring out what actually happened to her mother and what her mother was looking into on the spaceship. The reason I reread this actually was because of the character Giselle, who is a side character and Aster's childhood best friend. After I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collin, I she popped up in my brain for some reason, and I just couldn't get her story out of my head, and I had to reread the book because I couldn't fully remember what happened to her, and it's devastating. She's such a good character, probably one of my favorite side characters ever. She's written so well. But the reason why this is like a 3 out of 5 stars is that the plot does get very clunky and things start to like tumble together really quickly to where you're like, where did that come from? Despite that, though, I did really enjoy this, but definitely go into it knowing that this is a book depicting slavery in its full brutality. So if that is uncomfortable for you, fucking strap in, dude. The final book I read in April was Are You Listening by Tilly Walden, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This is a queer graphic novel that I had been meaning to read forever. It's been on my bookshelf for a very long time. I've read several other Tilly Walden books, so I also knew that I would go into this really enjoying it. It is a super atmospheric story about 2 queer people on a road trip, both running away from something, and then it gets kind of like magic surrealism. The vibe was kind of very like Welcome to Night Vale, if you know that podcast or that series. It also took place in West Texas, and as someone from Texas, it's just funny and nice reading something in Texas when you recognize like town names and whatnot. As far as like the actual plot of this book, story contents are definitely more of like a short story than like a full novel, despite its length, because the graphic novel has like pages of just like full colored panels. So the reason why this is 3 out of 5 stars is because the story kind of left me wanting more, but I still really enjoyed it. Okay, next up, here's everything I read in May. I started this month with reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I cannot believe the discourse that went on this book. This was one of my favorite Emily Henry books, and I was shocked when I got on BookTok and BookTube and saw so many people not enjoying it or saying it wasn't a romance when it definitely is. So this is about Alice and Hayden, who are both the writers, who found a recluse heiress after some like famous family tragedies. She chose to just fully step away from fame, and basically Alice and Hayden are competing to write her biography. Margaret, the heiress, basically tells them that they will each spend time with her for a month, and at the end of that month she will decide who gets to write her biography. During that month, they both live in the small coastal town that Margaret is staying in, and they start to spend time together and fall in love. And their falling in love felt just so natural to me, and I loved their banter, and getting Margaret's story was very interesting. Alice also has like a group text with her friends that she references sometimes, and the way they speak in that group text just reminded me so much of me and my friends that it just made me laugh out loud. I just really enjoyed this story. My only gripe with it, I wish we got more time with the characters at the end. Like I wish we saw more of Hayden's story, but we like stayed in Alice's POV the entire time. So when things like resolved for him, we didn't really get much of it, and I was sad. And I would have liked to. Next, I read Paranesny by Susanna Clark, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. This is like a magical realism, and the story is told through journal entries, and it is so well done. Our main character, Paranesny, is living in this mansion that is not like an ordinary mansion. It has floors on floors on floors, and like the bottom levels are flooded by an ocean. The top levels have like birds. There are massive statues and monuments in all of these different rooms. And Paranesny just goes around cataloging the labyrinth and making notes on where everything is and noting the tides and whatnot. Because even though he's the only person in the house, there is the other that he meets up with like once a week to compare notes. As Paranesny explores, the other starts to act strange. Another person shows up, and like the mystery of the house, who the other is, who Paranesny is, starts to come undone. And it was just done so beautifully, and it was so well written. I was obsessed. It is such a good book. I think if you like fantasy and magic realism, definitely check this out. Susanna Clarke is a great writer, and I'm excited to read more of her work. Okay, next I read Feed Them Silence by Lee Mandela, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This is a sci-fi novella about a doctor who mind melds with a wolf in order to understand their thoughts and feelings. And she becomes kind of like really obsessed with being in this wolf's head that her marriage to her wife starts to fall apart. She just becomes obsessed with being a wolf and experiencing what it's like to be in a wolf pack that her like real human life doesn't mean much anymore. I definitely thought this novella was going to get weirder when it came to her wolf obsession, but it was definitely more of a character study about Dr. Sean, like finding community in all the wrong places and finding more connection with wolves than humans. I loved the arguments with her wife. I love a good, well written argument. Yeah, and this was just more character focused than like action sci fi. Like, I think the weirdest thing that ever happens with the whole wolf thing is that she craves a burger when she's been a vegetarian for years. So it never gets like crazy, but it was still an entertaining read regardless. Next, I read Call Me Esteban by Leila Kalamush, which I gave 3.5 stars. This was another novella, and it is a fiction kind of biography. The author has said it's kind of based on her real life. This is also a translated work. The author was born in Sarajevo, which is where the story takes place. It is about a girl whose mother died young, and she grew up pre and post war Sarajevo. So it's about like how growing up in those conditions affected her and her family and her identity, and then also her identity as a queer woman growing up. You really go through her childhood all the way up to her being an adult. As someone who lost a parent young as well, there was surprisingly a lot of things I found relatable in this. Because I guess it really just like connects with the human experience, and the writing was very poetic and easy to read, and yeah, just a good novella. Okay, the 2 books I read in June. I read The Long Walk by Stephen King, which I gave 3 stars. This is the first Stephen King book I ever read, and I picked it up because they're making a movie and the trailer looked so interesting to me, but the book was absolutely not at all what I thought it was going to be. So, The Long Walk is a death competition. 100 young men volunteer to do the long walk, where the men start walking and they have to keep a pace of like 3 or 4 miles per hour. And if they fall under that pace, or if they stop walking altogether, they get a warning. And after 3 warnings, they are shot dead. And basically, the walk goes on until everyone but one man is left standing. And like, I definitely was more interested in like, how did America get to a point where these young men are willingly like joining a death competition for a prize, which apparently is like a godly amount of money and also like anything you can wish for. And like, why are people okay with it? How long has this been going on? Like, why is this such a big deal? It is said that it is televised, and there are people who show up along the path of the walk to like cheer them on or whatever. And yeah, I really wanted to know like how America got there and like how people felt about it, but the story was more interested in like the psychological aspect of our main character Ray breaking down and like what it means to just like face death head on and what that does to a person, which is fine, but like I just wasn't as interested in it. It was also kind of rough to get through because I didn't like any of the characters. This book was filled with just teenage horniness and teenage male aggression that was kind of hard to swallow, which made it hard to like continue on and to like root for anyone, because the entire time I was just like, what are y'all doing here? I also think it was too long. I think it could have cut down like 50 pages. There's a bit of just nonsense rambling in there, and then in the last 50 pages, like a ton of things start happening and you have no time to sit with it. And this also was, I think, one of Stephen King's earliest work. It was released in like the 80s. So putting that story in kind of that time period just makes a lot more sense. But I will say I am very excited for the movie to see how it like modernizes it for today's audience. Okay, the last book I read was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gilling, and I gave this 4 stars. This is a romantasy that has so much good romantasy tropes that just really freaking hit. So our main character, Sybil, is a diviner. So she lives in this cathedral with her other diviner sisters, who aren't actually her sisters. They are all orphans or foundlings, and they basically traded away their lives to be diviners. And a diviner is like a girl who makes prophecies, and in order to do that, she drowns in like a sacred river in the cathedral or whatever. One day, close to the end of her diviner service, because they only serve for a certain number of years, a new young king with his knights comes to visit. And of course, one of the knights doesn't believe in all this diviner bullshit and starts to give Sybil a hard time. And their dynamic was instantly so much fun. I love that even though he gave her shit, she gave him shit just right back. Her diviner sisters start disappearing one by one until she's the only one left, and she basically escapes the cathedral and enlists the help of the knight and the king to help find them. I liked the world building, I liked the gods, I liked all the diviner vision seeing nonsense. The only reason I didn't give this a 5 stars is that the ending felt so predictable in not a good way. Like, it wasn't satisfying. It felt very like, yeah, this is what you needed to do so that you can continue the series and make a book too. Despite all that, this is definitely one of my favorite romantasies that I've read recently. The romantasy genre is just so oversaturated at the moment, so it was nice and refreshing to read a romantasy that actually hit for me. I think I lied. I think I only read 11 books in quarter 2, so sorry about that. That's everything I read in the months from April to June. Let me know if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them, and I will talk to you later. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!